Castlevania was one of the biggest surprises of 2017, and I don't think I'm alone in that opinion because I spent the last year hearing people echo their disbelief at the quality of the Netflix adaptation. And it's easy to see why, because if we're being completely honest, video game movies and TV shows have a crummy track record. That's to say, they suck. Most are unwatchable. But Castlevania bucked the trend and delivered a hyper-violent series that simultaneously honored the original games and led to a thoroughly captivating animated series. Season 2 proves that the quality was not an accident. These 8 new episodes not only maintain the great storytelling and absurd violence, but also manage to expand the scope of the series in a number of impressive ways. Almost as if it's fueled by all the positive reactions, the second series is more confident and ambitious. This is how you adapt a beloved video game franchise. So I need to tell you right off the bat that this is a spoiler review. So if you haven't watched the 8 new episodes that just went live on October 26th, then save this for later and come back when you have. Okay, now that it's just you and me, I think I need to start by saying that this season is awesome. It absolutely blew me away and delivered on the promises of the first season. There was a point a few episodes in where I realized that the creative teams have a long game in mind. They aren't just going to adapt Castlevania 3, but also Curse of Darkness, Simon's Quest, and possibly even Symphony of the Night. If Netflix continues to give them the green light, then they're just going to tell this whole damn story, and that's exciting. I think the big news this season is definitely the introduction of Hector and Isaac, two of the most important characters in Castlevania Curse of Darkness. The show does such a great job of slotting these characters into Dracula's inner circle that the addition feels completely natural. Between the backstories and the lengthy conversations, we begin to understand why Dracula would have these humans and vampires by his side. Speaking of which, Dracula is, once again, a somewhat sympathetic character. He's angry and his plan to kill every last human is misguided, to say the least, but he's also despondent and on the verge of being suicidal. His heart just isn't in it after the religious leaders in power murdered his wife or helping sick people. He's a brutal murderer who must be stopped at all costs, but he's also surrounded by a gang of even worse villains. And that's what I love about this season of Castlevania. Instead of focusing on the hero's journey, most of these 8 episodes revolve around the bad guys. We learned that Isaac has an abusive past that continues to haunt him to this day. There's also Godbrand, a Viking vampire who's concerned about Drac's mental health. And don't forget about Carmilla, a lanky vampire who has a secret plan of her own. These different factions have their own agendas, and that's what makes this season so exciting. And it's not just the castle intrigue that's so compelling, but also what it sets up. Carmilla, for example, will play a big part if they decide to jump ahead to Simon's Quest. And even if they decide to skip Simon altogether, she's certainly part of Rondo of Blood. Which brings me to the more important new characters, Hector and Isaac. Neither of these characters are the focus of this season, but they'll become vitally important as we shift away from Dracula's curse and towards Curse of Darkness. It's exciting to see how this show develops these characters and finds ways to use them to bridge the different stories and games. And that's what this show does so well. It makes you care about everybody involved. No matter how evil they are, you start to understand where they're coming from. That's going to be important if the series ends up adapting more of the games. By doubling the episodes this season, the writers have been given the freedom to fully develop the characters and lay down the groundwork for future seasons. You can very easily see how they would get from this season to Symphony of the Night based solely on the characters they've introduced here. And I desperately hope that Netflix gives this show enough time to get there. And it doesn't just hint at the future, but it also pays tribute to the past. I love how this show takes Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard to the Belmont Castle, where the unlikely trio learns about Leon's fight in the 11th century. This was a great way to quickly summarize parts of the story that we'll likely never see in the show. They also take the opportunity to hide important treasure in the wall, because it's not Castlevania until you hide something in the wall. You know, it's funny, we've spent this entire time talking about the season and have barely talked about the 3 heroes. I think that says a lot about the focus of this season, which is to establish the factions close to Dracula instead of spending more time with Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard. What little time we do get with the trio is often light and playful. Trevor and Alucard butt heads in an enjoyable way, and I can't get enough of Sypha's sarcasm. She and Trevor have great chemistry, which makes a lot of sense given where they end up in the final episode. In a lot of ways, this feels like the end of that chapter of the Castlevania story. We successfully completed all of the threads set up in the first season and got the ball rolling for the next chapter. So I doubt we're gonna see much of Trevor or Sypha going forward, to be honest. And even though they were sidelined for most of the season, I feel the writers did their story justice. They hit all the important beats and also featured a fight against Dracula that took up the entirety of a half-hour episode. The whole damn thing! It was this phenomenal battle that not only vanquished the evil vampire, but also brought closure to Trevor's story. Best of all, the season shows us how we're going to continue the story going forward. I wondered after watching the first season if they were going to try to cram all of the stories into Trevor's life, but clearly that's not going to be the case. They've perfectly set up a new hero and villain for Season 3, assuming it follows what happens in Curse of Darkness. Then we'll likely get some kind of time jump, I have to imagine. My guess is that they'll likely condense the original Castlevania and Simon's Quest into just one season, followed by another time jump to get us to Rondo of Blood. I can see us getting to Symphony of the Night, but it probably won't happen for another 2 or 3 seasons. Now, does that bother me? Not at all. Honestly, I want to see them take their time and give every character and story the attention they deserve. I want to see how they handle Simon Belmont and everything that happened in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. But don't rush to get there simply because that's the Castlevania game everybody knows and loves. And based on what they set up with this season, it seems clear that they aren't even interested in rushing, and I love that. Now, there are a few things that I don't love. Much like the first season, the weakest link is the animation. Don't get me wrong, I like the look of the show, the character designs, and the excessive violence. But a lot of the animation looks stiff and kinda cheap. Thankfully, the strong voice cast more than makes up for the occasionally clunky visuals. Now, this may seem like a minor complaint, but I'm a little disappointed they didn't find a place for Grant Dynasty. Sure, he's a bit cartoony, and I'm not entirely sure how he would fit in, but he's basically the only thing missing from Dracula's Curse. It would have been nice to have him help the trio somewhere along the way, even if it's nothing more than a short cameo. I think that plays into the bigger problem I had with Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard. They just didn't do a whole lot this season. A lot of their adventure is simply to get to the Belmont Castle, and then they spend a few episodes reading books, which, let me tell you, isn't exactly edge-of-your-seat television. They save most of their story until the very end of the season, when their paths once again intersect with Dracula. It would have been nice to see the heroes do a little bit more this season, but I'm not sure if I want that at the expense of learning about Hector, Isaac, and Carmilla. The truth is, I like where this season leaves us. I feel a lot more confident in the storytelling and pacing after watching Season 2, and I trust the creative team to do the rest of the games right. And that's exciting, because there are a lot of amazing stories yet to be told in this animated universe. Dracula may be down for the count right now, but I have a hunch he's gonna find a way to menace those pesky humans once again. And I can't wait to be there when that happens. This is a fantastic season that deserves all the praise it's bound to get. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What did you think of Castlevania's second season? I mean, we've seen it all now, so let me hear your thoughts on how it concluded, what it sets up, and everything else you thought of it. In other news, I'm currently hard at work on a bunch of reviews, including The One We Found, Drowning, Heliophobia, Siberian, The Time-Traveling Warrior, My Memories of Us, and more. So much more. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.